There's a moment in every man's life that haunts him more than betrayal. It's not when she finally leaves. It's when he realizes she left long before the goodbye. Most men believe a breakup happens in a single moment. An argument, a confession, a sudden outburst. But the truth is far colder. Women leave slowly, not in rage, but in retreat. And by the time she tells you it's over, she's already mourned you, replaced you emotionally, and stored away her love like a folded memory. You just didn't see it. Why? Because you were still living in the illusion she stopped believing in months ago. And it always starts the same. The slow decay, the slight emotional withdrawals, the subtle disinterest that feels like nothing at first. She still smiles at you, still replies to your texts, still sleeps beside you. But her energy, that presence you once felt across the room, is gone. And you feel it deeply, but you tell yourself you're imagining it, that it's just stress, or mood swings, or work. But inside her, something irreversible has shifted. She has stopped craving your presence. This is the emotional decay no one talks about. It's not loud, it's not cruel. It's almost invisible unless you know what to look for. In female psychology, detachment rarely starts with action. It begins with emotional data collection. When a woman starts noticing patterns, emotional unavailability, lack of leadership, predictability, the absence of growth, her subconscious doesn't panic. It adapts. She begins what psychologists call pre-grieving, the process of emotionally mourning a relationship before it ends physically. And here's the painful paradox. The more you try to fix things in this stage, the more she disconnects. Because now your efforts feel reactive. They don't come from strength, they come from panic. And panic is the opposite of masculine grounding. When a man senses distance and immediately scrambles to compensate with more validation, more gifts, more availability, he confirms her deepest fear. He doesn't feel her anymore. He only fears losing her. What she truly needed was your awareness, not your apologies. Your strength, not your neediness. Your growth, not your guilt. But you were too distracted by your own certainty to notice her confusion. Let's walk into a real-life moment. Maybe this was you. She sits beside you, watching a show. She laughs, but doesn't reach for your hand. She responds, but doesn't initiate. She agrees with your plans, but doesn't seem excited anymore. You ask if everything's okay. She smiles and says, "Yeah, just tired." And so you let it slide. You convince yourself that everything's fine, that relationships just go through phases. You don't confront her disinterest, because confrontation would make it real. And that's the beginning of your blindness. The moment you start protecting the comfort of your illusion more than the truth of her distance. Meanwhile, she's slowly erasing her emotional ties to you. She'll spend more time texting her friends. She'll start working late. She'll get into self-care routines you're not part of. And worst of all, she'll become more polite with you, as if she's treating a guest, not a partner. That's not maturity. That's the death of romantic energy. And yet you hold on tighter, without realizing she's already let go. One day, long after she's gone, you'll look back and realize you weren't holding on to her. You weren't holding on to her. You were holding on to her shadow, the image you had of her, the warmth you once felt, the connection you assumed would always be there. But love is not static, and inaction is not neutrality. It's regression. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do not be surprised. Everything is ephemeral." You were born to lose, to let go, to endure. You didn't lose her the day she left. You lost her the moment you stopped feeling her change. You lost her the day she emotionally walked out, and you were too caught up in comfort to walk with her. The masculine lesson here isn't just about women, it's about presence. It's about waking up before life forces you to. Because the harsh truth is, if you don't sense emotional shifts, you don't deserve emotional loyalty. There's a chilling psychological asymmetry between men and women. When it comes to breakups, women process the ending while still in love. Men process it only once love is gone. And that difference is what blindsides so many men by the time she says we need to talk. She's not confused. She's not emotional. She's not even angry anymore. She's done. Not because she stopped feeling, but because she already felt everything. Quietly, repeatedly, alone. And when she realized, you wouldn't notice, wouldn't change, wouldn't even ask the right questions. She stopped grieving and started planning. That's what most men don't understand. Her tears happened long before the goodbye, and while you were comfortably believing things were normal, she was going through internal chaos, one that you never even noticed. Let's break it down in sequence. The emotional exit of a woman in a dying relationship follows a three-stage psychological arc, and none of it is sudden. 1. Emotional frustration. This is the phase where she still cares. She brings things up. She wants to feel seen. She might say things like, "You don't really listen to me anymore. I just feel like we're distant. I miss how we used to be." But instead of hearing her emotions, most men hear complaints. They defend, deflect, or delay. They say, "You're overthinking it," or worse, "You're being dramatic." This is where she begins to feel unsafe emotionally. 2. Silent mourning. She stops fighting. She stops explaining. She becomes polite. This is not healing, it's detachment. She might still be around, but her investment is gone. She no longer argues because she no longer sees the point. You mistake this silence for peace. It's not. It's resignation. She still shares a bed with you, but she's emotionally homeless. 3. Strategic planning. Once she's numb, she starts preparing her exit. She might focus on her career, her fitness, or new friendships. She won't announce it. She won't give you warnings, because to her, it's already too late. She's slowly rebuilding a version of herself that doesn't include you. And the final irony, she'll try to end things kindly, as if she owes you a gentle goodbye after months of emotional neglect you didn't even realize you gave her. Men are wired differently. We don't grieve preemptively. We focus on external problems, not internal disconnections. So while she's emotionally spiraling, we're solving surface-level logistics. She's busy. I'll give her space. She's not texting much. I'll just let her breathe. She's distant. Maybe it's just hormones. We try to fix her silence by ignoring it, and in doing so, we prove her worst fear, that we aren't emotionally tuned in enough to hold space for her. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But if one person is reacting and the other remains unchanged, there is no relationship. There is only emotional isolation inside a shared routine. By the time you realize what happened, you're alone. And now you're grieving for a woman who already grieved and left long ago. This is the masculine burden, to wake up before the collapse, to sense silence not as comfort, but as warning, to hear what is unsaid, to feel when something's wrong, even if her words are still soft, because by the time her words turn hard, the woman you loved is already a memory. True masculinity isn't reactive, it's perceptive. It doesn't chase affection, it cultivates presence. And if you've ever lost a woman you thought was fully yours, ask yourself, did she really leave suddenly? Or did she spend months walking away slowly, while you stayed asleep? There is a dangerous illusion that traps most men in modern relationships. The belief that if the routine stays intact, the bond must be two. She's still coming home. You're still having dinner. You still text each other good morning and good night. So everything must be fine, right? No, routine is not connection. Presence is not intimacy. And physical proximity is not emotional closeness. Most men confuse cohabitation with commitment. But what they fail to see is that women can remain physically present long after they've checked out emotionally, and when a woman no longer feels you, your energy, your ambition, your emotional awareness, she no longer bonds with you, but she might stay for now, out of habit, or guilt, or fear, until she doesn't. Men are neurologically wired to value predictability. We operate best in systems and frameworks. We find comfort in routines. Work, gym, sleep, relationship. It gives us a sense of stability, control, and accomplishment. But here's the dark side. That same stability becomes blindness. You stop observing. You stop evolving. You stop sensing. While she's becoming more emotionally distant, you're thinking, everything's good, nothing's changed. She's probably just stressed. We've been together for years. She's not going anywhere. This is how men lose women who never even said they were leaving. Because your mind is wired for routine, not for emotional nuance. A woman, however, operates very differently. Her attachment is emotional first, physical second. Her brain is biologically optimized to detect relational dynamics, body language shifts, tone changes, things you think are too small to matter. But that's exactly where relationships begin to die, in the small shifts you never tracked. Picture this. You come home. She's making dinner. Music's on. Everything looks the same. But when you hug her, she doesn't melt into your arms. When you talk about your day, she listens, but her eyes aren't alive. When you touch her later in bed, she lets you, but she doesn't pull you closer. You think, at least she's not angry, but indifference is much colder than anger. At least anger means she still feels something. This is disconnection. Wrapped in politeness, you can live beside a woman for months and not realize you've become a stranger to her, because you were checking the boxes without checking in, and slowly she begins retreating to emotional safety. Without you, women evolve to select men based on emotional intelligence, not just resource stability. In ancient times, yes, survival depended on protection and provision, but it also depended on the male's ability to sense danger, adapt quickly, and lead emotionally. A man who couldn't feel subtle shifts, a changing environment, a tribe's energy. His partner's distress put his family at risk. That ancient biology hasn't changed. When a man becomes numb to the emotional weather around him, a woman doesn't feel safe. She feels unseen, and an unseen woman will not stay seen for long, because the feminine needs to feel emotionally held, not coddled, not overvalidated, but felt. When she sighs differently, she wants you to notice. When her tone gets sharper, she wants you to ask why. When her rhythm changes, she wants you to sense it without her having to spell it out. Because if you can't see her shift, How will you ever protect her heart? Nietzsche once wrote, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." But most men look for obvious signs, loud arguments, dramatic confessions, clear statements, and by the time those arrive, it's too late. What you missed were the invisible threads, the slowing conversations, the shorter eye contact, the lack of playfulness, the pauses before saying, "I love you." You thought everything was stable, but stillness is not safety. It's often the final calm before emotional abandonment. If you want to keep her, don't look for signs when she's leaving. Learn to read the space before she does, because the woman who stays silent while slipping away is already halfway gone. The bitter irony of modern masculinity is this: men work so hard to become stable that they forget how to remain powerful. Somewhere between building routines and offering emotional safety, many men fall into emotional sterility, where they become so predictable, so emotionally flat, so reliable, that their very presence becomes invisible. And for a woman, that's not peace. That's slow, psychological suffocation. She stops feeling alive in your presence. And when that happens, she doesn't get angry. She doesn't start a fight. She just numbs out, while her mind begins to seek emotional color somewhere else, masculine. Energy is meant to create polarity, not chaos. But polarity must be felt. In the beginning, she felt your presence like gravity. You had a direction, a mission, a tone in your voice that grounded her. You were unapologetically yourself, moving towards something with power and stillness. That stirred her feminine energy, made her soften, open, and trust. But over time, you became available. You adjusted, you compromised, and you lost edge. You were always there, always texting, always agreeing, always saying yes. And that masculine presence she once felt so intensely, it dulled into emotional predictability, and then into emotional invisibility. You stopped being a storm. You became the ceiling fan, always on, always spinning, never noticed, and she stopped feeling everything. You take her out to dinner, she smiles, she laughs at your jokes, you hold her hand. You think, we're doing okay, but look closer. She's not leaning in. Her eyes scan the room when you're talking. She laughs 2 seconds too late. Her phone keeps lighting up, and she checks it. When she thinks you won't notice, you're still the man in her life, but not the man in her mind, because you've become too available, too known, too emotionally safe. And the feminine doesn't thrive in safety, it thrives in uncertainty that comes from grounded power. The moment a woman knows exactly how you'll respond, how you'll act, how you'll feel, she stops being curious. And once curiosity dies, desire follows. Then presence, then respect, until only politeness remains. From an evolutionary perspective, women evolved to respond to men who stirred their nervous system, not in fear, but in anticipation. This doesn't mean chaos or toxicity. It means mystery plus groundedness. She needs to feel that you could walk away if necessary, that you're not addicted to her approval, that your world exists with or without her, and yet she's invited into it with full presence. But once she realizes you've centered your world around her, she feels the pressure of emotional leadership shift onto her shoulders, and she resents you for it. Even if she can't explain why, she stops melting into you and begins hardening emotionally, because masculine energy without mystery becomes emotionally neutered. And when you neuter yourself to keep her, you only accelerate her emotional exit. Carl Jung said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And yet most men morph into what they think women want, instead of becoming who they truly are. And in that sacrifice of selfhood, they lose their edge. And then lose her. Because here's the truth. The moment she knows she owns you, she loses the very desire that made her chase you. So the question is not, how do I keep her happy? The question is, how do I keep evolving? How do I remain grounded in my own mission so that she never becomes the mission itself? Because if she's the center of your universe, she eventually orbits someone else's gravity. Asterisk. There's a moment that feels like death. The day you finally realize she left long before she said goodbye. Not physically, not with bags and boxes, but emotionally, withdrawing affection day by day, like waves receding from a shore. You're left staring at an empty beach, wondering when the water disappeared, unaware that it's been happening right in front of you, slowly, methodically, quietly, and now you're here, staring at your own reflection, surrounded by the ruins of what felt like love, wondering if you were blind or just naive. But this moment, as devastating as it feels, is not your destruction, it's your invitation, because this is where the Stoic path truly begins. For many men, a woman's slow emotional exit is the most brutal initiation they'll ever face. Not because she betrayed them, not because she lied, but because she left without a fight. She didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even accuse. She just ... stopped caring. That quiet detachment is more damaging than any dramatic breakup, because it forces you to ask the one question you've avoided for years. Who am I when no one is choosing me? And this question, though agonizing, is the most necessary one a man can ask. Because masculine transformation doesn't begin when you're loved. It begins when you're abandoned, left to rebuild yourself with nothing but your breath, your backbone, and your beliefs. In the relationship, you built routines around her, checked your phone for her, measured your worth by her responses. You didn't mean to become dependent, but slowly you did. And now, in her absence, you're detoxing from her presence. This is where most men fail. They seek replacement. Instead of reclamation, they jump into flings, hit the gym obsessively, pretend they're fine, all to fill the silence that used to sound like her laughter. But the true path isn't to run from the pain, it's to use it, because pain is data. And when interpreted properly, it becomes direction. Carl Jung said, "Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. So feel the emptiness. Let it burn, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming aware. The woman is gone, but your deeper self is still here, waiting to be reclaimed." This will sound harsh, but it's liberating if you truly understand it. The man you were when she left deserved to be left, not because you were evil, not because you weren't enough, but because you were unaware. Of her, yes, but more dangerously, of yourself. You tolerated emotional numbness. You abandoned your edge. You confused stillness with presence. And she, consciously or not, responded to that decay. Now, you have two paths. Chase a new version of her to silence the pain, or become a new version of yourself, so this pain never repeats. Choose the second, always the second, because the man who doesn't need her back is the man who finally understands his own power. One day, far from now, you'll look back at her not as the loss that ruined you, but as the wound that remade you. She was not your ending, she was your trigger. She exposed your sleepwalking. She mirrored your passivity. She withdrew so that you would confront your own absence, not hers. And that is her final gift. Clarity. Now, you walk alone, not because you are unloved, but because you have outgrown the version of yourself that needed someone else to feel worthy. And in that solitude, you become a man that no woman can silently walk away from again, because this time, you're watching.